Now, a bit more optimism for Victorians this morning, looking ahead to the easing of coronavirus restrictions. Daily case numbers in Victoria are back below 50 again, but that death toll keeps on rising. Reporter Steph Ferrier joins us now from Melbourne. Steph, g'day. So take us through this latest information that's just been released in the last hour or so about Victoria's position with coronavirus.
Hi Joe, yes, so we are now down to 43 new cases of coronavirus, which, as you mentioned, is down below 50 for the first time since Monday. So that is good news after we had a little bit of a rise up in the middle of the week and it's now started to come back down again. So that's a good sign for us here. Sadly, another 9 deaths. So that takes Victoria's toll from coronavirus to 710 people who've lost their lives, which is just really unimaginable, isn't it? But if we just have a look back at that 43 number, I've done a quick calculation just based on some of the reclassified numbers that the Department of Health issues every day. So of course it might come down a little bit further once that 43 number is reclassified, if there's any duplications in that. But we're now down to that 14-day rolling average of 67.8. Now that's just yesterday, it was around 70, so it's starting to come down, and of course, as you remember, we do need to get down below 50 before the end of September, and hopefully then we can get out of lockdowns. The 7-day average, just to give you an idea of how quickly it's coming down, is now down to 51, and that compares with 85 just a week prior to that.
Yeah. And what's the latest on discussion around restrictions there, both in Metro Melbourne and the regions?
Obviously, everybody is watching these numbers really carefully here because we are in lockdowns and have been for just such a long time. Particularly in regional Victoria, they are really feeling it in terms of especially those places where they don't even have any coronavirus cases and never have had any coronavirus cases either. They're pretty annoyed that they've been lumped in with everybody else across Victoria and are having to restrict businesses and workplaces and movements and things like that. There are some 675,000 people living in around 30 LGAs or local government areas that are in that boat, and they want to be able to open up as quickly as possible. Now, the Premier has said that he doesn't want to have a patchwork and confusing number of smaller localities where they can open and others can't, because then that's just going to potentially encourage people to travel and move to those areas where they're further opened up. But he has conceded that these numbers are looking really good. The regional case numbers yesterday were down to a 4.5 rolling average, and that's underneath the 5 that they need to move forwards. And so he's hoping that by the end of next week, they can really move a step or two out of these restrictions. As to metropolitan Melbourne, well, we've still got a little bit further to go.
And Steph, what's happening with the hotel quarantine inquiry today?
So today we are expected to hear further about details of the chain of command in terms of the response to this pandemic when the former Deputy Chief Health Officer, Dr. Annelies van Diemen, takes the stand. Yesterday we heard that the Deputy Secretary of the Health Department had actually stopped our Chief Health Officer, Professor Brett Sutton, from being able to assume command of this fight against coronavirus as the State Controller, even though he wanted to do the job. Now, she said that it was important to ensure that somebody had the time and expertise to be able to manage the logistics of this program, but obviously Brett Sutton didn't agree with that decision at the time, and she stressed that at no time was his decisions ever second-guessed or questioned. So he still had full control as the CHO, which we're now saying these days. But of course, this inquiry, this independent inquiry into the botched hotel quarantine system, which has led to this deadly second wave, has still got a little bit of time to run, and it's very interesting to hear from some of these senior bureaucrats exactly what sort of power plays and what sort of chain of commands were behind these key decision-making events that led to this.
And Steph, I've got to say, over the last several weeks or months, as we've crossed to you each morning, I've kind of looked forward to mornings where there's been a relatively low number. Obviously, every day we take into account that people have died, but separate to that, we're keeping an eye, obviously, on the coronavirus case numbers, and that number's come in this morning at 43 or whatever it is, and it felt so good. And from outside Victoria, we're looking at you and seeing your emotion as a reflection of what the people of Victoria are feeling. I just feel like this morning when you've come up with that number, I haven't felt the excitement that you've had on previous days. Is there...
I'm trying to keep a lid on it, Joe.
Yeah, right. You're trying to be realistic about how things are going to go. Yeah.
That's right. But, you know, the sun is shining here at the moment in Melbourne. We are looking forward to spring and warmer weather. We've got the curfew being extended to 9 o'clock instead of 8 o'clock, having to go back inside your house. So there's an extra hour as we get a little bit more sunshine. So hopefully things are looking on the up for us, because I think really Melburnians and Victorians need it.
Yeah, soldiering on. OK, Steph Ferrier there in Melbourne. In Queensland, the political fallout is continuing over the decision to deny a woman in hotel quarantine approval to attend her father's funeral. Reporter Michael Rennie joins us now from Brisbane. Michael, g'day. So how much does this issue hurt the Premier ahead of the Queensland election?
Well, it's certainly putting a lot of pressure on the Queensland Premier, Anastasia Palaszczuk, and a lot of that's coming from the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison. There's 50 days to go until the Queensland election. This could become one of the key issues in this year's election race, and the calls to show more compassion when it comes to exemption comes after a Canberra woman, Sarah Casep, applied for an exemption to come to Queensland and visit her dying father. Now, that exemption was granted 2 days late after her father died, and so she decided to travel to Queensland to attend the funeral. Now, she was put into 14 days quarantine and then had to go for another exemption to actually attend the funeral. Now, that was granted, but she was only able to attend on her own in full PPE gear and wasn't allowed to be with her family members. Now, that's despite the fact that there's been 62 days since there's been a positive coronavirus case in Canberra, and the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, has called for the Premier and the Queensland Government to show more compassion on this issue. The Queensland Premier, Anastasia Palaszczuk, has said that the Prime Minister is turning this into a political issue. She says she won't be bullied on this. She also says that it's not her decision, it's the decision of the Chief Health Officer, Jeanette Young. So this stoush and this war of words is set to continue, particularly over the next 50 days, Joe.
OK, great to have you on deck, Michael. Good to see you. Cheers.